As recently as October, Donald Trump's re-election team and top Republican officials viewed the 2020 Democratic primary as a two-way race between Senator Elizabeth Warren (DMA) and Joe Biden, and had entirely written off Senator Bernie Sanders (IVT) in high-level strategy discussions.
A few months later, Team Trump, the GOP, and the president himself aren't laughing off the self-identifying socialist anymore. In fact, they're gaming out various attacks and troll tactics to deploy against the Vermont senator in a potential general election face-off.
According to 4 sources familiar with the internal deliberations, an aggressive anti-Bernie effort is already being drafted inside the Trump campaign, the Republican National Committee, and allied organizations. And one of the major ideas being kicked around is to deploy more victims of socialism and communist regimes to make the case, via video testimonials, against Sanders' vision of governance.
Bernie has never met a socialist he didn't love, and we plan on releasing even more content featuring people who have suffered under socialism themselves, RNC Communications Director Michael Arons told the Daily Beast on Monday. He noted that the committee had launched a Victims of Socialism website in October, and has already filmed more victims whom it hasn't publicly unveiled yet and will be releasing those videos in the coming months. We believe these will resonate in particular with Hispanic voters.
Similar ideas, including content highlighting unrest in countries such as Venezuela and linking that to Sanders' brand of democratic socialism, have been discussed by senior Trump campaign staff, per 3 people with knowledge of the situation. However, one of these sources said that discussions were merely preliminary at this time, given that there is, of course, no Democratic presidential nominee yet.
Of course we're going to use socialism against Bernie, if it's him, this source said. We're not stupid.
According to a senior member of one outside group supporting the president, a «big push» is already being plotted, in large part targeting Florida, to underscore the plight of those who've lived under far-left governments. A scorched earth approach to hitting Sanders' past comments about socialist or communist countries would be one favored by President Trump, according to 2 individuals who've spoken to him about this in the past 2 months. One of the sources said that Trump privately said late last year that he wanted to see an onslaught of TV content and ads that colorfully paired Sanders with hammer and sickle iconography, if the senator indeed secures the nomination.
The Sanders campaign said on Tuesday evening that the fact that Team Trump was plotting ads to run against the senator was proof positive that he was intimidated by him as a potential opponent.
Donald Trump is getting a little bit nervous about facing Senator Sanders in a general election, said Sanders' campaign spokesman Mike Casca, and the president's campaign is quickly realizing that the only way to attack someone who spent his entire life standing with the working class is to lie.
There are, additionally, major philosophical and practical differences between what Sanders proposes, which he's for many years compared to Scandinavian models of governance, and brutal, openly oppressive systems seen in present-day Venezuela and in Eastern Bloc nations during the Cold War. In the 1980s, for instance, Sanders did laud what he saw as positive steps, including on health care and education, taken by the Castro dictatorship in Cuba and the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. But the senator has shed some of the more radical proclamations of his younger days, and in some cases, just didn't follow through when he might have had the chance.
In the 1970s, Sanders had advocated nationalizing a large percentage of American industry, as CNN reported early last year. When asked about it by CNN's Chris Cuomo, Sanders responded, "I was a mayor of a city for 8 years. Did I nationalize any of the industry in the city of Burlington, Vermont? I don't think so."
Trump has, predictably, not conceded such nuance, at least not in his public messaging and harangues. For months, the president has publicly trashed Sanders as «crazy» and a «communist», foregoing the socialist label for the farther-left tag. "Well, I think Bernie's a communist," the president told Fox News host and informal Trump advisor Sean Hannity during this year's Super Bowl interview. "I think of communism when I think of Bernie. Now you could say socialist, but I think of Bernie sort of as a socialist but far beyond a socialist."
Furthermore, Kayleigh McEnany, Trump 2020's national press secretary, said in a statement on Tuesday, "It matters little who emerges as the Democrat IC nominee, for we already know the outcome, far-left extremism will prevail." But
when it comes to socialism of the Sanders variety, this president has some decidedly mixed emotions. Though Trump has bashed the socialists or communists countless times in the 2020 Democratic primary, promising that America will never become a socialist country, he's also conceded to donors and advisers behind closed doors that running against a socialist candidate in the general election might not be quite so simple.
As the Daily Beast reported in September, the president told donors at a private event late last year that even though a lot of people think it'll be easy to beat in 2020, the truth is, it might not be so easy. Trump, according to a source who was in the room, added that you can have someone who loves Trump, but many people love free stuff, too, and warned that if Sanders and other progressive politicians convince enough voters, particularly young ones, that they're going to eliminate their debt, that's a tough one to run against in the general.
Despite his condemnations of authoritarian leftists once praised by Sanders, President Trump has shown few reservations about cozying up to various despots and autocrats, including ones who are still nominally communist.
It's been nearly 5 months since news of the Ukraine scandal broke, kicking off a rapidly cascading series of events and dramatic revelations that resulted in Donald Trump's impeachment in the House and subsequent acquittal in the Senate.
Some of his Republican fellow travelers, including Senator Susan Collins have publicly insisted that President Trump had learned his lesson and there was therefore no cause for his removal from office. Trump, when asked about it this week, straight up told TV anchors at a private lunch that he hadn't learned his lesson because he believed he'd done nothing untoward and there was no lesson to be learned. It was a perfect call, he reportedly told the anchors, a reference to his infamous July 25 phone call with Ukraine's leader.
Similarly, some of the president's allies and most prominent lieutenants, who've championed the Biden investigations, smear jobs, and Ukraine pressure campaign from the start, haven't learned their lesson either. In fact, with Trump's swift acquittal even with Senator Mitt Romney's defection in their rear view, they say they're still out for blood.
Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal attorney, whose Biden-related digging and controversial shadow diplomacy led directly to this president's impeachment, is very much in the category of Trumpworld's unrepentant.
When asked Monday if he still plans on ramping up his investigations into Joe and Hunter Biden after an acquittal, Giuliani tersely replied to the Daily Beast, "Yes, because it's a matter of the fair administration of justice for real." He did not go into details regarding what these continued private probes would entail, but the former New York mayor wasn't alone in his enthusiasm.
In Giuliani's quest to uncover dirt on, or provoke a Ukrainian announcement of an investigation into, the then frontrunner for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, he openly collaborated with the fervently pro-Trump cable news outlet One America News Network. In recent months, OAN launched a series with Giuliani in an effort to exonerate the president and implicate the Bidens in misconduct and corruption, with some accusations being entirely baseless and conspiracy theory-minded. This endeavor, which included a high-profile joint trip to European countries at the height of the impeachment probe, a jaunt that freaked out various senior officials in Trump's national security apparatus, did not end up saving the president from being impeached.
And yet, the conservative news channel and Trump propaganda vehicle doesn't appear to be through. OAN President Charles Herring said in an interview Wednesday that his network has more investigations forthcoming on the Bidens, as well.
Herring said the first salvo, post-acquittal, will be another hour-long special, Part 4 of our series, featuring personal attorney to the president, Rudy Giuliani. He added that the team was finishing up post-production today, Wednesday, and it will be airing this weekend. There are several Ukrainian individuals, Viktor Shokin, who will be featured. Andriy Derkach will be featured. And a member of the Ukrainian parliament, Oleksandr Dubinsky, is also featured.
As it happens, a TV channel owned by Ukrainian oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky had just been raided by Ukraine's security service on Wednesday. Dubinsky has close ties to both Kolomoisky and the news outlet. Some Ukrainian individuals linked the raid to Dubinsky's meeting with Giuliani in Kiev in December, but officials working in the parliament pushed back on that claim, saying the security service was searching the channel's office for potential wiretaps that recorded the country's prime minister.
We're considering another international trip, we're working on the plans right now, which would lead us to Part 5 of our series, OAN's president added, while not commenting on whether or not Giuliani would be going on this trip, as well. There's a number of unanswered questions, regarding Ukraine and the Bidens, among other topics. We're going to continue to dig.
Additionally, Trump allies on Capitol Hill have already made clear that they're itching for some payback. About an hour after Wednesday's acquittal, GOP Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson announced a review regarding potential conflicts of interest posed by the business activities of Hunter Biden and his associates during the Obama era.
It was only 2 weeks ago that Trump's Legislative Affairs Director Eric Ueland had breezed past a group of reporters and was quoted saying, "I can't wait for the revenge."
To be sure, several Trump administration officials involved in Ukraine policy have already been condemned by the White House, particularly those that participated in the House impeachment inquiry and testified on national television. President Trump described the cooperators as human scum and liars. The White House Twitter account delivered a personal attack on Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, one of the White House's top Ukraine experts, smack in the middle of his testimony. Following the appearance of Dr. Fiona Hill, Trump's former top Russia advisor, White House loyalists took to social media to try and frame the former official as too emotional.
But perhaps no one drew as much ire from President Trump as former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who left the administration just weeks after the whistleblower complaint was released in September. Although the former official refused to cooperate with the House's inquiry in the beginning, he changed his tune later on and said he would answer questions in front of the Senate. That set off a firestorm inside the White House, where officials tried to manage not only the possibility of a Bolton appearance but his upcoming book manuscript, which The New York Times said directly linked Trump's push for investigations in Ukraine to the freezing of military aid.
For a guy who couldn't get approved for the ambassador to the UN years ago, couldn't get approved for anything since, begged me for a non-Senate approved job, which I gave him despite many saying don't do it, sir, takes the job, gets fired because frankly, if I listened to him, we would be in World War VI by now, and goes out and immediately writes a nasty and untrue book. Trump said on Twitter just 2 days before the Senate voted on whether to bring Bolton in for questioning.
Others entangled in the months-long Trump-Ukraine mess don't appear to have the luxury of seeking vengeance. Several of the most entrenched Trump officials ensnared in the Ukraine affair have since ditched the administration, perhaps out of fear of retribution. Others have remained at their posts, but with their roles diminished and future prospects in government thrown into question.
While figures such as Giuliani have continued to meet with Ukrainian officials and politicos and plot new investigations throughout the impeachment process, other characters in the Ukraine saga, including the so-called Three Amigos, have drawn back from public view. Some of the officials are still being wrapped up in ongoing inquiries by outside interest groups, such as American Oversight, a Washington-based ethics watchdog which has filed numerous records requests in search of new details about the administration's communications on Ukraine.
Current and former national security officials who spoke to the Daily Beast for this story said Kurt Volker, the former envoy for Ukraine in charge of negotiations, played the biggest role on the ground in Kiev. Volker was the most educated about the region and understood not only the historic struggles of the country but also its deep desire for reform, those officials said. But Volker resigned from the Trump administration 1 day after the whistleblower report was released in September. He didn't offer a public explanation for why he left.
The former Ukraine envoy was the first official caught up in the saga to resign from the administration, but he wasn't the last. Shortly after, a slew of Trump officials departed, including Bolton and National Security official Tim Morrison. Jennifer Williams, an aide to Vice President Mike Pence, last week requested an early departure from her post. Meanwhile, top U.S. officials in Ukraine also moved on. Former Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, who was ousted from her post in May, resigned from the administration this week while her replacement, acting Ambassador William Taylor, departed his post just days before Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was set to visit Ukraine and meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky.
As the departures and resignations rolled out into the news, current and former officials in Ukraine have worried about the future of their relationship with Washington. Several officials told the Daily Beast they felt no one was left in the Trump administration who was passionate about improving relations between the two countries and worried the U.S. would yet again decide to freeze military aid in the future.
Their worries are compounded by the fact that perhaps the only leading Trump official in a position to continue the dialogue, EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, played a vital role in helping Trump with his political errand in Ukraine.
Sondland has maintained a low profile following his blockbuster appearance in the House impeachment inquiry.
Sondland, who donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural committee, was one of the first individuals in the Trump administration to join the push by the president to convince Ukraine to open specific investigations into Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and the 2016 presidential elections. He played a major role in trying to push Ukrainian officials to agree to Trump's demands. In a series of meetings on July 10 at the White House, Sondland created a scene when he brought up with top Ukrainian officials the need for Zelensky to agree to the investigations.
During his testimony in November, the EU ambassador quite brazenly threw his amigos and Giuliani under the bus, saying Trump's personal attorney led the back-channel effort and that he was acting on the president's orders. Sondland also corroborated other officials' testimony that Trump did, in fact, engage in a quid pro quo. To The Observer, Sondland's testimony was sure to elicit blowback from President Trump. Instead, though, the president offered another form of chide.
When asked by reporters about his EU ambassador, Trump said he didn't know Sondland very well. Before adding, "Seems like a nice guy though."
Although Trump didn't denounce Sondland in front of the cameras, there was an effort behind the scenes at the State Department to manage the fallout of Sondland's involvement in the Ukraine saga. The EU ambassador did not return back to his post in Brussels for several weeks, two State Department officials said, and has since been asked to keep a low profile, particularly on Ukraine policy, throughout the impeachment proceedings.
Energy Secretary Rick Perry and former Special Envoy to Ukraine Kurt Volker joined Sondland at Zelensky's inauguration in May. Vice President Pence was supposed to attend the ceremony, but the amigos went in his place, setting the stage for what's been described publicly by national security officials in the impeachment inquiry as an illegitimate foreign policy back-channel.
While Secretary Perry is no longer an official in the White House, his ideas on Ukraine live on in the Department of Energy. Ukrainian officials who've worked with Perry in the past have said they look to him to help them navigate a way to become less dependent on Russian natural resources.
Before he left, Perry worked on developing a plan, in coordination with Kiev, for America to export its liquefied natural gas to Ukraine through Poland. In August, 3 countries agreed to cooperate on the project. Poland's representatives said the country would commit to sending 6 billion cubic meters of gas to Ukraine starting in 2021. While that plan is still being crystallized, Ukraine and Poland are playing ball, or trying to. The first tanker filled with American LNG landed in Poland in November. Officials are still working behind the scenes to sort varying competing interests for contracts.
Despite the bodies left in the impeachment drama's wake, by Wednesday close of business, the president and his team were busy messaging their way through another supposed victory lap, and gleefully raking in cash off of it. Vindicated. Trump texted supporters, via his 2020 campaign, on Wednesday night. "I've been acquitted from the impeachment hoax. We need to send a message, donate now.